So, as mentioned, I have a special treat for you guys today. I got Graham Cochrane from the Recording Revolution on the show to have a chit chat with us, and we're doing this live on Blab, as has been my habit of late. We got a number of people in the room. This is probably actually one of the most well attended Blab sessions that I've had so far. So you must have a little bit of draw there, Graham.
I hope so. I tried to get the word out. I got some good people, so if the timing worked out, I hope they could join us tonight.
Nice. Well, we got a few in the room already, like I say, so that's a promising start. For those of you who are with us, if you do want to get a question in during our conversation, then just put a /Q before your comment in the chat, and it will show up on the left in the question area, and I can pop it on the screen like you see this one from Gary Craig there, and we can talk about it. Don't know how much time you have to offer here, Graham, but I'll try to be respectful of that as well.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll go as long as I can. No one's yelling at me yet, so.
Perfect. So if indeed, for some strange reason, there is somebody in my audience who is not familiar with your name, can you give us sort of the 25-cent tour of who's Graham Cochrane and what's the Recording Revolution all about?
Yeah, I'm just a guy that loves music and got into recording years ago and wanted to make my own music and stumbled into blogging literally by chance, and created this thing that I wasn't trying to create, where I was just trying to share everything I've learned about recording and mixing. I went to audio school, worked in some big studios, and I have a lot of friends that are super talented musicians, and they want to record their music. And I basically started collecting all the stuff and info and suggestions and gear suggestions over the years that I've shared with them individually. My wife said, why don't you put it on a blog for once so you could stop having the same people over for dinner and saying the same things to these people. And it was just to help some of my friends, like, cut through all the hype online about what you need and don't need. And for some reason, it was a message that resonated with a lot of people. So it's become a resource now where it's free articles, videos on recording, mixing, gear you need and don't need. I'm very much a minimalistic, simplistic person, which either you like or don't like. And I try to basically help musicians figure out how to get good sounding recordings and mixes every week.
Yeah, and it definitely it's inspired me, the work that you've done, and I can imagine it's probably inspired a number of other people as well, judging by your YouTube subscribers, et cetera, et cetera. You seem to have left an impact, which is fantastic. You know what? We got one question that's kind of relevant to what we're talking about now from Gary on the screen right now. He's asking, did you become an engineer out of necessity because you're a musician and you wanted to get your products out, or did you have a goal to twist knobs from the beginning?
That's a great question, Gary. No, I'm a musician first, never wanted to engineer, was only interested in it because money was tight and I couldn't afford enough hours in the studio with my band in high school to do the record that I thought we needed to do. And we had that decision that many of us face of, okay, do we put all our money into a few hours in a studio, or do we pitch our money in and buy some equipment and then hope that we can figure it out? And obviously time won't be an issue, but skill and experience will be an issue. So we decided to buy a Korg 8-track hard disk recorder back in the 90s. And nobody in my band wanted to read the manual. And if you think recording in a DAW is complicated today, then you haven't worked with a Korg or any of those hard disk recorders where they're not musician-centric in manuals. They're very technical. It's so mumbo jumbo. So it was a very painful process to learn how to multi-track. But once I figured out the basics of multi-tracking, then my interest for twisting knobs grew because I realized this was a complex but beautiful art form. So like the songwriting was fun, the live gigging is fun, and then learning how to craft the sound in the studio was just as fun. It was like a third element to song creation that I loved, and decided I want to learn more about this. So that started my love for it. But I'm still musician first.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because I have a very similar story back in high school. Same thing. Boys in the band, we pitched in and grabbed, at the time, it was a Tascam Porta Studio with a cassette. You remember those? It was 8-track. Right? and it was like just south of $2,000, I believe, back in the day too. Now for a $5 app on your smartphone, you can do more than we could do back then, So I can definitely relate to that. And I've always been a bit of a technology nerd myself. So as soon as I got into software recording, this was back in the 90s there, it was, game on for me as far as I'm concerned, because that was combining two of my passions, tech and music.
Yep. Oh yeah. TechMuze, baby.
Exactly. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things that you've been working on over the last little while that is kind of intrigued me is your sort of your, what do you call it, song a month challenge.
Oh, the
Um,
one song, 1 month challenge. Yeah.
exactly. So you're kind of going from brain seed of an idea to finished product of a single song within the confines of a month as a time constraint. If I understand you correctly,
Yeah.
I've been following a few of the videos on that series, which is very, very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually, ironically, the very first video series I did 6 years ago was the original one song, 1 month challenge. Back when my mother and my brother and maybe two people read my website. And because the idea, that was sort of the genesis of how I felt was, you know what? Recording can be overwhelming for people. And then even just like making an album is overwhelming if you do it in your spare time. So I said, why don't we break it down into just a small bite-sized thing? What if you just recorded and released one song in a 30-day period and don't commit to anything more? And if that's all you did for the year, then great. But what happens is, as anyone knows, when you break things down in bite-sized chunks, you reduce the overwhelm, and then people get some momentum early on. And once they've had a taste of completion, a taste of finishing a small project, then that, for most people, can ignite a passion to just make more music. And so to start the new year this year, I really wanted to bring that back. Now that I have a larger audience, I could share it with more people. And it's just a way to get people excited about making music again, instead of getting bogged down in plug-in tutorials and choices and sample rate arguments and stupid stuff that doesn't make any difference. Like, I wanted people to get excited about the music. So that's what it was.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's especially with people that are sort of tech minded, that get interested in home recording because of that, the use of technology, because that's definitely, as I mentioned, where I come from. It's really easy actually to get lost in the forest of potential options and, like you say, plugins and and things of that nature, and it's really easy to lose focus on what we're actually here for, which is to create a piece of music and be able to share it with folks and get some feedback and see what people have to say about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely something that I've wrestled with in the past and probably will wrestle with again in the future, I imagine. Now, one of the things that I wanted to get into with you today, like I imagine that in situations like this, if you're on someone's show or even just in the content that you produce, you spend a great deal of time talking about music production, mixing. You have some really high quality tutorials that I actually promote in the classroom at TechMuze Academy because they're fantastic. And so if people want to hear a lot about that, there's thousands of little bits of content all over the internet. But one of the things that I wanted to get into with you a little bit today is the songwriting slash music marketing, the business of being a musician, because that, as you may know, is the other pillar of conversation at the TechMuze Academy, music production and music marketing. I noticed actually that you released a single, I believe, not long ago, and when I checked it out, because I'm always curious to see what you're up to, I noticed that you're using a service called Nimbit, and I'm curious. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that and why you've chosen to go with that.
Yeah, Nimbit was purchased by Presonus a couple years ago, and so I found out about it through them. I know the guys at Presonus pretty well, and they were starting to incorporate it into their branding. And so 2 years ago, when I released an EP, I was just starting to hear about it, and I said, you know what, I'll try to release it on this platform just to check it out. I'd done Bandcamp and I'd done iTunes and Spotify and all the other it was just merely checking it out because they're my friends. And I've since released another EP last year, and then I did a single last week on it. What I like about Nimbit is two things. One, I have a store, a digital store that's like a mini iTunes store, that I can control the pricing in a big way, and also have different versions of my EP easily. So there's two things that go hand in hand. So it's an interesting psychology of, do you sell your music or do you give it away for free? And there's been a lot of big name artists that have experimented and had some really interesting results. And there's a lot of stuff that's been written about it. And I don't profess to be the most knowledgeable in this area, but I've experimented the last 2.5 years with it, with my own music. And what I like about Nimbit is it allows me to do two things. So one, instead of just having a price for my songs and having it on iTunes, let's say, there's two problems with that. One is I don't control the pricing. It has to be whatever their pricing is. And B, they take a 30% cut. That's a huge cut. So that's one negative. So with Nimbit, I can set the price at literally whatever I want and take a majority of it. I think 95% I get to keep. So I think they take 5%. I could be wrong. It could be 10%. So don't quote me on that. I forget. It's either 5 or 10%. Okay. But they take a smaller cut. So I keep more of the money. I can set my own price. But what I really like to do is use their name your price option. So instead of giving it away or charging a flat fee, I do this psychological hybrid, which is you name your price. What do you want to pay for my EP? And it does a couple of things. I've written about this before. I'll try to find the article and get it to you if you want to link to it or something. But when I first did an EP, I put up the EP and said, name your price for both MP3s and the HD wave downloads. And so literally when they click on it, it already has a suggested price that they can then arrow it down to 0. So psychologically, they have to choose to say, oh, Graham technically wants to sell this 5-song EP for $5, but I can drop it down to 0 if I want, and they can take it for free, and they're more than welcome to. I don't get angry at them, but they have to acknowledge the value that is at least ascribed to it, and then arrow down or whatever price you want to pay. Giving something away for free is tricky for me because I don't think people really value free. Like if I gave you some free tickets to a show to an awesome band, you would definitely know there's value there, especially if it's a band you like. But if push comes to shove and you're busy that night, are you going to feel really bad if you don't go to the show or not?
That's true. That is correct. Yeah.
You're not going to feel bad because there's no money involved. So they were free, which just reveals that there isn't much value to you in those tickets because they were given to you for free. But if you had paid for them, you would find a way to reschedule as best you could, unless it was like a family member that died. You'd find a way to get to the show because doggone it, you paid $100 for those tickets. You're going to go. So I would rather people pay something for my music because then once they've paid for it, they're going to want to at least listen to it because I've downloaded free music and never gotten around to listening to it.
Yeah, I've done it before myself. You make a good point there. So what kind of results did you get?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So I offered the EP. It was 5 songs. Name your price, and then I offered a deluxe version of the EP. This is the second piece of the equation. A deluxe version that's $20, and it includes the same 5 songs. Then it includes a 40-minute documentary video that I shot behind the scenes of how I wrote the songs and recorded them. It includes a music video download. It includes lyric explanation videos where I explained all the lyrics to all 5 songs in 5 separate videos. If you care about that stuff. And then it included demos, raw acoustic guitar demos into my iPhone of the songs when I was first writing them when they were fresh and they were slightly different. So you get all this bonus behind the scenes stuff, and it was a fixed price, $20. You couldn't name your price. You couldn't whatever. So you had a choice, a $5 EP that you could technically name your price for. So a lot of people took it for 0. Or you could just pay $5 or whatever, or the $20 deluxe version. And between those 2/3 options, the average amount of money I was getting for a person that downloaded something was $5 per person, which equaled out to be $1 a song. So people took it for free. Some people got the deluxe version. Some people were in between. But out of all the people that physically gave me their email address and downloaded something, the average per head was about $5. So it was very, very interesting to me. So I got what I really wanted for it was about $1 a song.
Yeah, and you also didn't have to give 30 points to iTunes.
I know. And even more importantly, I got to give more value. And I think this is the key to anything you want to be successful in. And the deluxe version to me was a value add. Yeah, it's more expensive, but I busted my butt creating a lot of really cool content and bonus stuff that if you liked me and my music, you would find valuable. And I gave that as an option. And a lot of people downloaded that and really liked learning about the lyrics, watching the behind the scenes videos, listening to the demos and comparing them. So I was not taking more money. I was adding more value. And it was a good option for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that approach a lot. I really actually like the idea of being able to give music away. This is something like I I create and record with my lovely lady Carol. We go by Dezz and Carol, and we talk a lot about this kind of thing. And on the one hand, you got bills to pay, and you need to have, if you want to consider yourself a business, you have to have some kind of product / service to offer. And so in most cases, that's music, merchandise, and then your services, your performances, and whatnot, right? So you have to have something. But I really enjoy the whole pay what you want model because I want the music out there anyway. I would rather have people listening to my music than not listening to my music, regardless of how they acquired it. But I found, and this is something that I talk about a lot on TechMuze, which is the idea of, rather than trying to sell CDs, I personally believe that the goal should be to grow a loyal audience, a loyal fan base. If you, I've found that if you have, if you give value, as you're talking about, as often and consistently as possible, that you will eventually grow a base of people who want to support you in what you're doing. Things like Patreon are a perfect example of that. Are you still using Patreon?
Yep, absolutely.
You still have an account there with Patreon?
Yep, I still have supporters. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because it was actually you that turned me on to Patreon as well. I think it was mentioned at the end of one of your videos then, and I'm like, what is this? And when I checked it out, it just made my heart feel warm and fuzzy, because this is an example of people who are not buying anything from you. They are simply showing you their love and support, and that they want to encourage you to continue producing what it is that you're producing. If you guys are not familiar, for those who listening and watching, patreon.com, check it out. It's a very cool way for your audience to support you if you are a content producer. If you're putting out videos, songs, comic books, podcasts, whatever, gives an opportunity for people to support you. So I really like that. Are you familiar with Amanda Palmer?
No.
Okay, well, Amanda Palmer's a musician. She used to be in a group called the Dresden Dolls. They were like a two-piece cabaret, punk cabaret type of act. And she does a lot of stuff on her own now, just as Amanda Palmer. She also subscribes to the whole pay what you want. You go to her website. It's similar thing. It's populated with $5, but you can put in anything that you like. And that was the first time I stumbled upon that. She's also what, in my opinion, is the epitome of someone who gets the fans are the business. I mean, no matter what business you're in, if you make pizza, or if you work at a pizza shop, you get a paycheck every week or whatnot, and you think that your boss pays you, but really it's the people eating the pizza. That's where the money comes from, right? Yeah. Without the people eating the pizza, there ain't no money to pay you. And it's the same thing in music. It's the fans that are the support of the business. That's where the revenue comes from. Even if you're involved in a major record label and the record label is throwing money into your bank account, they're getting it from somewhere. And of course, it's the fans. And Amanda Palmer, in my opinion, is I recommend, if you're curious, to check her out, is the epitome of someone who's able to really and effectively blur the line between fan and friend, and maybe even family,
Cool.
And she has an extremely loyal fan base because of it, and a rather successful business. In fact, if you look her up on Patreon, last time I looked, she was getting over $30,000 per thing that she publishes, which is pretty dang impressive. Yeah,
that is impressive.
So I like this idea. I'm going to actually look into Nimbit a little bit myself. But what other types of things? We're going to get to some of these questions, by the way, that we have on the left. But before we sort of steer the boat back to studio tech, which I know everyone is chomping at the bit for us to get into, sure. I just wanted to pick your brain and see if you had any thoughts or what types of things that you do as an artist in the way of marketing, in the way of fan growth, and actually putting your offers out in front of people and that sort of thing.
Well, to be honest, the last few years I've put so much more effort behind the recording revolution. So I've become more of a content creator there than with my own music. So although I've released an EP almost every single year in the past 7-8 years, I haven't really pushed it much. So I'll do a launch. I'll push it to a lot of the music I write is for my church and my friends. So it's kept more local, but I launch it online. And the recording revolution is a unique place where I get to share my music as I'm making it. I'm teaching mixing or recording stuff, and I'm using my music as an example as I'm stumbling across something I think is something worth to share. So in a lot of ways, I've built somewhat of a fan base just from my readers and viewers, but I haven't really been pushing myself strategically as an artist in the last 7 years because of the recording revolution became a new love for me of being a teacher. So I'm still I always knew I was going to be a content creator, but I never thought it would be in teaching, and I never thought it'd be in teaching audio. It just happened to be a channel for me to use, and I happen to be good at it, and I happen to have a message that somehow resonates with a certain group of people. So all the things I'm doing with the recording revolution do apply to the music realm of wanting to promote your own music. It's the exact same thing. It's very simple things like having a quality piece of content to deliver. So making sure you're writing great songs that resonate with people. And you find that out by testing it. You share your music with people and you get feedback. And that's what a lot of people don't want to do. They just assume if I write something, it's my own world and the world better love it or hate it. And that's an okay way to work unless you want to grow an audience. And to grow an audience, you have to find out what the audience likes and doesn't like. Now, you don't always have to do what the audience says, but you need to know them. And they also want to help you. If you write a song, they may like the song, but they might say, you know what, I really like your music better when you use drum loops instead of live drums. I thought that was a cool vibe. And if you hear that a lot from a lot of your audience, then you might say, you know what, maybe my music is better suited for that style. And they might help you develop as an artist. So listening to people, creating great content, building an email list is the absolute best thing. And Dezz, you know this, is the absolute best thing you could do no matter what your market is. I have a friend, Peter Hollins, who is a YouTube celebrity guy. He does a cappella covers of big songs. If you listen to the Pentatonics, he's friends with them, but he does the same kind of thing, one-man show. Peter Hollins, just get on YouTube, and he's got over like 1 million followers. And I've known him for like 10 years because we would go way back in the a cappella world because I used to be an a cappella dork myself. And but he's been really good, like Amanda Palmer, like you're saying. He's grown a fantastically loyal fan base. But one thing he didn't have was an email list. And one of our mutual friends, Andrew Locke, who's a brilliant business guy in himself, was kind of taking Peter under his wing and saying, look, you got to start an email list. And he basically is starting to finally build something because the email list is more powerful than your YouTube following, Twitter, Facebook. Doesn't matter. All those platforms could go away next year. They could all go away, and then your whole following it's like you're renting land on someone else's property to grow your following instead of buying your own property that you control. So email list is more powerful because people don't change their email addresses nearly that often. It's not a platform that's going away, and it's a more direct way to communicate. So even if you don't have anything to sell, I tell musicians and content creators, offer something of value to get people on your email list. Give them more value, more free value, engage with them, make them feel special, and nurture that list. And if you ever one day have a service or a product, or you launch a new album, or you're going on tour, now you have people to tell, and now you can do something powerful. Like, as you said, it's the audience that is more powerful than the money necessarily you make, because if you ever want to make a living and support a family, you have to have an audience. So email list is the best thing I could tell people.
100% agree with that. And it's interesting because I have these kinds of conversations, as you might imagine, fairly often with people in my life. In fact, up until recently, I used to work at the local music store, the Long and McQuaid chain. And so I was in there 40 hours a week, people coming in and picking my brain. I was in the recording department, of course. But so I have these kinds of conversations a lot. And most people don't seem to understand when I stress the importance of an email list. They go nod and go, oh yeah. And then they go away and they don't do anything about it, And almost every one of my mentors in the business world, when asked, what was the thing you wish you had done sooner or whatever, and it's email list. I wish I started that 10 years before I even had a business, because as you say, it's a powerful, still to this day, a powerful way of staying in touch with the people that have expressed an interest in what you do. And also, there are some, as I'm sure you're aware, there are some powerful tools of automation that will allow you to scale your engagement with people. I was speaking about this a few episodes ago where, if you have 10 fans, it's easy. You can handwrite them a letter and put it in an envelope and drop it in the mail, right? When you have 10,000, you have to start to think, well, how can I keep up this same quality of engagement in a way that can actually scale to larger numbers? And email list is a fantastic way to do that. You can have 3 or 4 or more sort of, I think of it as onboarding style emails where you're trying to get someone to get to know you better, open the kimono and invite them into your world and get them to ask questions and reply and to start an engagement. And you can have those personally written. It's not like a robot's doing it. It's you, and you can have them queued up and ready to go. So anytime somebody does go, oh, you know what, I will download that free track, and here's my email, then you have some engagement already queued up and ready to go. And if someone replies to you, now you can personally reach back and say, hey, thanks, appreciate it, and so on and so forth, and start to build that relationship with your audience, which of course is key. In my opinion, that is the job. Apart from making great content, making great art, you got to have that first. But in my opinion, as far as the business is concerned, that's really the bulk of the job. And there's many ways to do it, but that's kind of the goal. I like that. Okay, so we got a few questions that we should maybe address before they pile up too high. Let's see what we got here. So Scott is asking if you have a mix template available that how you wrote your buses and whatnot. I'm sure you probably have some content on that topic somewhere on your channel.
Oh, yeah. Man, just get on my website, therecordingrevolution.com, or the YouTube channel, and just search the word template. I've done posts, I've done videos. Almost every video I do, you can even see what I'm doing over my buses. I have a way I do it in Pro Tools and I try to explain it so it makes sense in any DAW, because I know Pro Tools is a little bit different. But yeah, I'm always showing what I'm doing on the mix bus and my group buses and how I route things. So just go searching for template and you'll find some stuff.
Absolutely. Let's see what else we got here. What are some tips for young aspiring engineer/artists? So we're kind of hitting both sides of the coin there. Any off the top of your head, quick tip come to mind?
Oh yeah. I mean, really just get involved, like get to know people and engage, ask good questions, like put your stuff out there, ask for feedback, have thick skin. Don't assume that you know what you're doing. Treat yourself as in a development phase. Don't be cocky about it. Assume that like everyone knows more than you, and see what you can learn from them so you can develop yourself. And while you're doing that, you're building relationships with people. So find out what they're doing, what they're interested in, even your fans. If you have 2 fans, like Dezz was saying, when it's small, get to know them and find out what they're into and just be a friend to them. It kind of, I don't know if you believe in goodwill, but I believe in serving people. I believe that if you lower yourself and so that you exalt other people above yourself and find out what they need and how you can serve them, even as an artist, how can I make music that you like? And what kind of, do you like live shows? Do you like CDs or MP3s? Just find out what people like. You'll learn a lot about your audience and you'll be able to deliver a better product or service. And if you're an artist, you are a product and you do have a service. That's the best thing you could do when you're starting out. And then just write a bunch of songs. The 1 song, 1 month challenge we just did on my site is a great little thing. It's 8 videos. You can go watch them right now. It's forcing you to finish stuff. So don't hang on to that EP forever or that album forever that you're perfecting. Don't be Guns N' Roses working on that record for 10 years. Like, you'll never get a great, perfect record if you just stick around working on it. You got to finish a record to get better and to get onto better songs. And every time you think, but these are my best songs. And it's true until you write your next ones. And those are your best songs. So finish projects, move on.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I guess all I'd add to that is on the artist side, connections. It's you basically said it. Obviously, keep making music. This is very, very important. But we're assuming if you're calling yourself an artist, a musician, that hopefully that's already happening. But it's reaching out and building relationships with people, both music enthusiasts and people who are perhaps in the industry that you may be able to scratch each other's backs as time goes on. That's a fantastic little quick tip as far as beginning. And as far as being an engineer, in fact, on the episode that came out Monday that on the TechMuze podcast, a little quick tip there was getting yourself a listening environment that you can trust so that you can focus your energy and attention on recognizing problems and figuring out how to solve them. It was sort of a philosophical rant that I had on Monday's show. That was the idea of problem solving relating to skill development. In fact, that's the way I like to look at it. The more problems I first recognize, you got to recognize them first. If you have a really poor listening environment, you may not notice them, or you may hear a problem and go and tackle it, but the problem doesn't actually exist because the problem's not in your recording, it's in your room. So that's the first thing, is being able to recognize accurately when you have a problem and then figuring out how to solve it, whether that's through experimentation or research. And that is the way in which you are going to develop your skills, no matter what level you're currently at, whether you're beginning or not. So that's thanks, Matthias, for the question. That's a good one. I'm going to scroll down the list here and get some of the earlier questions. Let's see here. How long have you been into recording and mixing when you created the blog? That's a good one.
Let's see. I started blogging in 2009, and I was recording since probably 95, or 96. So I don't know how many years that is. My math is slow today.
I'm not going to challenge you on the math because I'm in the same position. So you'd been at the craft for a while before you started writing about it. That's 13, the bottom line.
Years. Oh, yeah. I did it in high school. I went to audio school in college for 4 years, and I freelanced for probably 3-4 years out of college, while in college and out of college. And I worked for a software company doing audio. So I've been doing it forever. I never expected to teach it to people. So I was just doing it, trying to make a living at it and having fun. And yeah.
Okay. What is our opinion on doubling lead vocals? I'll let you take a stab at that one first. I'll give my thoughts as well.
Doubling lead vocals, it's cool because doubled lead vocals can be an obvious effect, which is really cool. Like listen to Foo Fighters. David Grohl did that on the very first Foo Fighter record, the self-titled one back in 95, which ironically was just a demo. He recorded every single instrument himself in a studio for 2 weeks as a way to like process and grieve the mourning of Kurt Cobain. So he'd written all these songs and just went to the studio just to like unleash his emotions. And so he played everything, and he'd never recorded on his own. So he had worked with an engineer, but he had heard about like doubling vocals. So he just doubled his vocals to make them sound cooler. And it was an obvious double. Once they did the mix, he kept them both pretty hot so you can hear the double. And that kind of became like a thing for Foo Fighters. And if you listen to all their records, unless he's faded it out in the last couple records, for 4 or 5 solid records, it was like 80-90% of the songs had that Dave Grohl obvious lead vocal doubled thing. So that can be cool. But also doubling lead vocals doesn't always mean that. A lot of times it's a subtle thing where you go from the verse to the chorus and all of a sudden you add a double or a triple, but just enough tucked under the lead vocal that the vocal seems to get a bit bigger and a bit more exciting, but you don't know why. And that can be really nice too. So I'm a proponent of both if they help and fit the song. And then there's plenty of times where I don't do either if I don't feel like the song needs it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there, which is does it serve the song? Does it, either does it enhance the creative expression you're trying to get across, or does it solve a problem? Back to the whole problem solving thing. And I think it's a danger that a lot of us fall into is habitual practices. It's like, oh, I doubled my vocal on that one song and it sounded good, and so I'm going to do that every single thing I record, and that, without thinking about it or without evaluating whether it really does serve the tune or not. So that's all I'd like to add to that, is that, you got to really, consider, is this helping in this particular musical situation? Is it helping? Another thing that I'll do sometimes, if it's just a mix on a session that I didn't record, if I was given a single vocal, is I may duplicate that track and tune one of them. And maybe shift it in time by a few milliseconds or whatnot, and then blend that in ever so subtly underneath the lead. And that's a way to sort of get a hack and slash doubled vocal if you're not in a situation where you can record one. Just a little food for thought there. Let's see what else we got here. For us monetarily challenged mixers, I can relate to that. Suggestions on the best economical monitors for a bedroom style studio. Now, I use Yamaha HS8s. Now, those are big. They're actually too big for my room, to be honest, but I don't bring them up in volume very, very well. But I like the fact that they have some bottom end extension. They're a little more expensive than economical, I suppose, but their smaller brother, the HS5s, probably about $190 each, I imagine. In my experience, I haven't heard much under the sort of $350, $400 for a pair price point that has really caught my ear. I found that once you start going down the ladder from there, you're getting glorified computer speakers, in my experience. Once you get to sort of $350, $400, in my experience, you start to enter into a level of quality. I don't know. What do you think about that, Graham?
Yeah, People don't like my answer to this because I don't really, well, it depends on who you are. Some people like my answer. I don't really care about expensive monitors. I still mix on KRK Rockets. I've had the Rocket 5s forever. Now I have a pair of Rocket 6s that somebody sent me, the newer version. It's basically the same speaker. I've used Presonus Eris E8s for a couple of years. Those were really nice monitors, but they were too big for my room. And I just am used to the Rockets. These are, I mean, in US, you can get a pair of Rocket 5s for $300 US for a pair. I consider that super economical for a pair of speakers. I really like them. It's funny. I didn't even realize this, but Jakir King, who's one of my favorite engineers out there, he did the Kings of Leon records and got Grammys for those. And he's worked with Nora Jones and a bunch of people. He mixed the Kings of Leon records on KRK Rocket 5s.
Yeah, and it seemed to work.
And they're still in his studio. Yeah, it's like, but I have really good friends in the industry that swear by really, really expensive Focal speakers and really, really expensive barefoot speakers. And I mean, but I don't really buy into the expensive monitor thing. There's still so many issues you have to learn. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Buy what you can afford and then spend your time learning those speakers and learning your room, both what's good about it and what's bad about it.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And the other thing too is regardless of what monitors you're working with, if you spend a good deal of time in that spot where you mix, listening to music, then you'll learn them. You'll learn your environment, you'll learn your monitors, and also to incorporate the use of reference tracks so you don't lose sight of the goal and you don't start walking around in circles, lost in the woods kind of thing when you're working. And you'll get to the finish line. I'm pretty certain of it. Which is kind of falls under the category of just listening skills, listening techniques. But I highly recommend spending time in your studio just listening to music as opposed to always working on your own stuff, because I believe it does help with perspective. Here's a question directed at you. How do I know when to pan my vocals?
Whenever you want.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna start to have a bit of a theme, I think, with some of these questions. Yeah. It's a lot of things are just simply creative decisions. It's not like there is a rule that you must pan that harmony vocal number 1 70% to the right or anything like that. Oh, yeah. It's what serves the song or what solves a problem you seem to be having. If things are sitting on top of each other, masking each other out, you might want to spread them across the horizontal spectrum a little bit to give them a little space to breathe, I suppose, right?
And just have
thanks
fun.
For the question.
I mean, so many, listen to the Beatles, listen to Jimi Hendrix. There's so many records, the drums are on the left completely and the bass is on the right. Stuff that if I did that in a video today, I would get thousands of people mocking me for doing that. And yet our guitar gods and our favorite bands of all times did it, years ago. Like, but you're not supposed to do that. That was when stereo was becoming really popular and they were like, what? Cool. This is a cool new thing. And so they used the cool new thing and made records like that for years. So do whatever sounds cool. That I think we've lost that in some degree because there are so many people that were innovators just experimenting and they were just crazy in the studio. And so have fun. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want.
Totally agree. 100%. And I love this question. What is the most useful yet non-essential part of a home studio setup? I'm going to say the lava lamp.
That's the most useful, huh? I don't know. I mean, they're kind of cool
keeps
looking.
Keeps my mood right.
Oh, okay. Well, no, okay. In that regard, I think the decor, yeah, for sure. The way you have your room set up has to give you the right vibe. That's something that's not essential to the audio, but it is super useful because it puts you in a better mood. So, there's a lot of challenges working in a home studio because it's not as comfortable and idyllic as a real studio, but that doesn't mean you can't set it up in a way that makes you feel more comfortable. For example, I've been in this house, in this studio for a little over a year now. And when I moved, we built this out in my garage here. I had no time to set it up. I had to just move my stuff in and keep working. And so a year went by and I finally took some time over the Christmas break. I got out of the office and stopped creating content for a month. And I finally said, I just need to, some of this furniture doesn't work. It worked in my old space, but it doesn't really fit this space, kind of. So I sold some furniture, bought some different furniture, rearranged some things, I put books in different places, decorated a little bit differently. And it feels a different rug. It feels a little bit more peaceful to me now, where I actually want to be in here now. And that changes my psychological approach to my day. and I'm a little more relaxed. So, and that does come across whether I'm teaching a piece of content or working on music. So the decor is pretty helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic tip. I can relate to the same thing. I've actually just spent a little bit of time over the last few days trying to get this room in order for doing things like this and for the video content. And not only does it give a little bit of a better look to the video, but it changes the way I feel, which changes, of course, everything about me in terms of my actions, et cetera, and my thought process and so forth. So yeah, definitely a fantastic tip there. Let's see. Will this automatically? Oh, it switches out the question. Look at that. Do you like to put excitation before or after compression in the chain? Harmonic excitation, I assume, is what Rabbi's referring to. I suppose it depends on when you're using it and which chain you're referring to. I'm assuming 2-bus.
If it's the 2-bus or the mix bus, I put it both. I have harmonic stuff before, I have it after, I have it all over the place. I'm a big fan of harmonic distortion, saturation, harmonic excitement, because of what it can add to like home recording tracks that are pretty clean and crisp, but nothing really super interesting. So I have it probably before and after and during.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I guess the thing to consider when you're talking about your signal flow regards to compression is do you want to affect a signal to change it in some way and then control its dynamics, or do you want to have a nicely controlled signal and then accentuate what you're left with? I suppose that's really the consideration, and that's going to vary from situation to situation, I imagine. But Rabbi, I appreciate the question. How do I make my final mix stay consistent? That's a broad one, I suppose, because it really depends on the problems that you're having, why it's not staying consistent. So if it's a question of your automation choices, maybe if it's a question of your compression choices, it's going to vary, I think, from situation to situation, like many things do. Do you have any thoughts on that, Graham? Keeping your final mix consistent.
I don't really know what the context for the question. Consistent with other songs on the radio,
yeah.
or just mix to mix. Like you churn out a mix of one song and you want your next song to have the same kind of vibe. I'm not really sure.
I interpret it as consistent from beginning to end, which I guess because he's talking about a single final mix, I guess that's just boils down to your automation decisions and your dynamics controls, I guess, for consistency, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe you can clarify a little bit of that in the chat there. Money. All right. Let's see what else we got here. I think we're getting through these pretty good. Quality web hosting sites for music-oriented pages that are free. Well, your Nimbit account can be free, right? And you can host your music there.
Mm-hmm. At the very least, yeah, you could just have that point. You can have a profile too, so when people go to your domain, it can highlight a certain song you're promoting. It can have a nice banner. It can have a little bio of you, and then has a store and even a calendar of when you're playing shows. And that can all be free. They have a paid account that gives you more options, but you could start with Nimbit for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I imagine there are a few other options out there too, but seeing as we've already spoken about that, it's worth having a look at. There was one question in here that I wanted to get to here. What is your take on virtual mix room type plugins for headphones? Have you used any of those, Graham?
So maybe you're talking about the new one from Waves that just came out. I'm guessing I'll see what you're asking about. I saw that demoed at NAMM, and it's interesting. I've used the VRM box from Focusrite back in the day that emulated different speakers in different room settings. That's the only headphone virtual room type thing I've used. The Wave one is a little different. Like literally, it tracks your face from a webcam. Mm. So as you put headphones on, if you turn, it can tell that you're turning, and it changes orally what you're hearing in your headphones to sound like you would be if you're sitting in front of speakers turning. So you'd get more or less. And I haven't played with it yet. I'm not opposed to new technology like that. If it helps you get a good mix, I would say try it. Try those things. But me personally, for a while I was using a lot of different things like room correction software. It's not the same thing, but on my speakers, I used Arc for a while from IK Multimedia, which is a super cool plugin. I used it for 2 solid years, did some great mixes on it. But you know what? It's funny. I personally decided to just strip everything back this last year. I went back to old speakers that I'm used to. I got rid of room correction stuff. I just decided to keep it as clean as possible. Mic into the interface, interface DAW to my speakers and my headphones, and nothing coloring it or changing it, and me dealing with whatever I have. So I personally don't like to use that kind of stuff. But I have friends that those tools are very helpful for them. So that's all I care about. What does your mix sound like when you use it? If it sounds good, then dude, that's your
absolutely. If it sounds good in the end. And also the other thing I like to consider is how smooth my workflow is. So if a tool can help me get the same quality end result in half the time, that's worth something to me. I use the VMR box a little bit in the past when it first came out. Like I said, I worked at Long and McQuaid, the music store. So I saw things just as they came out, and I had the opportunity to bring things home, just borrow them, because we product knowledge, right? So we had a phrase there: why own when you can loan? And so I did. I checked out the VMR box, and it was kind of cool. Maybe I didn't spend enough time with it, but I didn't find that it helped me the way I was hoping. And I've used the IK Multimedia Arc room correction, which is also fantastic, especially if you're dealing with, like most of us are, less than ideal acoustic environments. That's for your speakers. So those are definitely worth having a look at. The one thing that I've been using just recently that it was mentioned to me by Matthew Weiss from the what is it? Production
Pro Audio Files.
Pro Audio Files, thank you. Is this plugin from a company called SonarWorks. I'm going to try to post a link in the chat so people can check it out. SonarWorks. There it is. And what it is, it's very similar type of product. I put it as the very last thing in my signal chain. And this is what I use when I'm working with my headphones, which incidentally, I use a pair of Sennheiser HD 598s. They're on the table beside me. They're a little huge looking. So I went with the smaller ones for the blab, but it actually has a preset for that specific model of headphones, along with a lot of other popular sort of higher end headphones that people might be using in the studio, that will give you a balanced frequency response and just correct any of the known issues with the frequency response. And I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. I trust Matthew's opinion. He's been in the business for a long time, and he does quality work, so it's worth a look. And I'll tell you what, I love it. In fact, I do a good chunk of my mixing now on my headphones with this plugin, because I can really trust. I don't second guess myself as much as I used to. I make a decision, I go and play it somewhere else, and the decision stays true. So that's definitely. I put a link there in the chat if people want to check that out. It's worth having a look at. All right, let's get a couple more questions here, and then I don't know. Like I say, Graham, I don't know how much time you got, so I don't want to keep you more than that.
I can go to the top of the hour. I got 12 more minutes. How about that?
Okay. All right. Well, let's squeeze 2 or 3 more questions in here, and we'll call this a wrap. Do you guys do you master your own mixes? The philosophy that the mixer shouldn't master the same project. I understand where that philosophy comes from. It's nice to have fresh ears at the different phases of the production. Sometimes we don't always have that luxury. How do you approach that one, Graham?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the interesting position where I've mastered for tons of bands, so I've been that second set of ears. But then my own music, I do everything start to finish. But that's kind of because I'm a little stubborn. Maybe I feel like if I mix it, I'm always mixing it so that it doesn't need to be mastered. Mm-hmm. Just like I'm always trying to record so it doesn't need to be mixed. I don't like leaving things for later stages. I think that's a lazy way to work in the way my head views it. So when I'm mixing, I'm comparing it to mastered tracks, and I'm trying to make sure that my mix sounds as close to what I think sounds amazing on professional tracks as possible. Instead of like, well, I'll leave that for the mastering. The only thing I leave for mastering is final output level, because if I'm doing multiple songs, they're all at different volumes anyway. I need to really render out those final mixes and then compare the volumes, because some would be mixed quieter because I have no context for how loud the other songs are when I'm in one session. So I'll say final volume balancing and maximum output volume for the end. And maybe I'll bring in more referencing there too and do a mastering session just to double check another day and see if there's anything I missed. But I do all my own mastering because I know what I want it to sound like, and I feel like it's a challenge for me to get it to sound that way.
Yeah, I take a similar approach. I normally do what I think of as the sort of single track audio mastering or whatever as part of my mix process. I'll have processes that would fall into that category on my stereo bus, and then I'll make sure I leave a little bit of headroom. And for me, the mastering process is when I begin to assemble the collection, the album or the EP. I bring them all into one session. I get levels so that when you flip from track 1 to track 2, it doesn't sound too different, like it's a different record all of a sudden. And then some final bringing the levels up to the top where I want them to be without losing too much dynamic range, and then just authoring the actual collection of music. But most of the sort of sonic stuff in general happens, in the mix process for me as well. Here's one good question here from Robert that I think deserves an answer. Managing the time between your music and your family, or business and family in general, especially if you are an entrepreneur, that can sometimes be a challenge. How does that work in your house?
Yeah, that's probably the most important question, because your family is way more important than your work. It's way more important than your fans. No offense to the people that like my content. As much as I serve you throughout the week, my family is more important. So my family understands that what I do is my job, so they respect me to have enough time. And so we, as a family, have said, 40 hours is what I want to cap it at. If it takes me more than 40 hours to do my work, then I'm doing too much, or I'm trying to do too much too quickly, or there's something out of whack, or I need to say no to more things or whatever. So we worked that out by like a number of hours, loosely. And then also sort of like a schedule. So the kids know that daddy's in the office Monday through Thursday between these hours, and if I have something on Friday, which I usually don't, I take Fridays off so I can be with my family. So they know my hours, and they know when I'm in the office, when I'm in the studio. And I give them my word on that. So when 5 o'clock, let's say, is my cutoff time, I wrap up as close to 5 as possible. I'm never done. I'm never done. I just have to stop. And so you have to put those boundaries ahead of time and respect them, because otherwise you'll keep working, especially if it's something you love, or if it's music, if it's like, I love my business. I love creating content for you guys. I love doing stuff like this. I love it. But I have to respect the boundaries time-wise. And that helps practically make sure I'm always home for dinner. I'm always with my kids. I get to take them to school. But what that doesn't do anything for is mentally. It doesn't help you mentally at all. You still have to, and I still have to find a way to shut off mentally, because when I can come home, I'm already at home, but walk into my kitchen, I can help the girls get cleaned up, sit down for dinner, and I can be at the dinner table thinking about a video I need to make, or thinking about that person that just blasted me on YouTube and said I'm an idiot, or that product I really want to make that I'm working on, I'm excited about, but I'm not finished, or that email I forgot to send. Whatever it is, I could still be thinking about it, or business is down and there's been a bad couple of months, and like, what's going wrong? What did I do? Those things can dominate my thought process, because the way my personality is wired, I'm very introspective. I think a lot. And that can be a downfall if I don't shut it off mentally. So that's an ongoing challenge, Robert. I haven't mastered that yet. That's one of my biggest goals this year, is to really trust God more with my business, and show up and work hard, but not try to own the responsibility of being the Recording Revolution guy and having all the vision, the idea, and give him the authority and credit to tell me what to do. And just, I need to be a dad and not be always in Recording Revolution mode. I need to be a husband. I need to be a friend. I need to call my parents. I need to be a son. I need to be a brother. And so I have to set boundaries, and I'm not perfect at it. So I hope that's a good answer. But for many people, I do find out that they don't set the boundaries. They just assume there'll be time. There will never be time unless you make it.
That's true. Yeah, that's something I've been guilty of myself because my mind works very similarly. I got a project on the go. It's there. It occupies, and a lot of the times I've noticed myself being guilty of not being present, especially with my daughter, and you know, and she's saying "daddy this" and "daddy that," and I'm only kind of half listening and giving the "oh yeah" kind of response, right? And that's something I try to stay conscious of myself. So listen, Graham, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. We're going to wrap this thing up in a minute or two, but there's one thing that I wanted to point people towards that you have put together actually with our mutual buddy there, Joe Gilder from the Home Studio Corner. This is, and I mentioned this to you that I wanted to talk about this a little bit, but it's your dueling mixes program. When you guys first announced the actual product, the service, I was kicking myself thinking, man, why didn't I think of that? That is a fantastic idea, you know? And rather than jump in and try to compete with you, I figured, well, I'll just send people over there, right? So I've actually become an affiliate of that program. But tell people really quickly what that is and why it's so amazing as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I appreciate that, Dezz. You've always been a good supporter. Dueling Mixes is fun. It's a community, basically. I wanted to give... if what we do on the Recording Revolution is cool and what Joe does on his site is cool, we're teaching and articles and videos, what if we could, as a community and members, all mix the same song every month, all get the same raw multi-tracks, so every month you get the same raw multi-tracks, and then we could all literally see what our mixes turn out to be, because that's what's interesting to me is how two guys can mix the same set of tracks and they can sound totally differently, and then that eliminates the, oh, well, you know, those tracks, he probably recorded them better or they were recorded in a nice studio. No, it all boils down to what did you do with the tracks? And so Joe and I had this idea of let's each pull up a song and Joe and I mix it in isolation and then we battle it out. And we let our members vote on whose version of the mix is better. And some of the times Joe wins and it doesn't make any sense to me because I know I'm better. And some of the times I win and he agrees, he thinks he's better than me for some crazy reason. But then that's the fun part for us, bragging rights. And then what it is, though, is the members get the same multi-tracks. They go and mix it. We each create, Joe and I create trainings and videos showing you how we mix it. We show you over-the-shoulder mix tutorials of like, okay, if you liked my mix or like the drums in my mix or the vocals in Joe's mix, here's what we did to get that. So then you can go learn and apply it on the same tracks. Because how often do you watch a, like, here's how to get a cool kick drum sound with EQ tutorial, but you don't have that same kick drum as a starting point. So it's hard to know if that technique would work for you. So we're all working on the same tracks. There's a monthly coaching call that's like this, where you get to ask questions, interact with Joe and I, and we answer anything you want to know about. It's a lot of fun. There's a community where people are sharing their own mixes. We have plug-in competitions. We give away plugins every single month to our members. There's all kinds of stuff every single month and happening every single week inside the community. So it's sort of like mixed training, mentorship, accountability, community, and then all sorts of fun goodies. We do meetups in person, and sometimes it's a lot of fun.
It's a perfect storm, man. Like I said, I was like, that's a good idea, man. By the way, I just posted a link in the chat to, it's actually the TechMuze affiliate link to Dueling Mixes, which is for those people who are listening to the podcast, it's techmuseacademy.com/DM as in Dueling Mixes. So feel free to check that out. I think it's a fantastic way to learn. You're getting two people's perspectives on the same session, and you're getting the session to go ahead and add your own perspective to, and then everything else that goes on inside the community and the coaching calls. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Just before we wrap this up, Graham, for those people who are with us live on Blab, you'll notice that above Graham, you'll see his name, and then there's a little plus button. Just click that plus button and follow Graham, just in case, Graham, you ever decide to do a blab for your audience, that people will get notified about it. Feel free to do that on mine as well if you feel so inclined, because I use this fairly about weekly. I record my show as we're doing right now on Blab Live so that we can have some of this community interaction as well. So feel free to do that. And apart from that, Graham, where's the best place for people to reach you?
Oh, absolutely. At therecordingrevolution.com. That's where all the content lives. Free videos and articles every single week. I'll tell you, the best thing you could do is join the mailing list. I've got an awesome video series that I'll give you there. It's called The Smart Start to Mixing. It's really cool because it talks about the first 60 minutes of your mix or so, how that really can determine how good your mix is going to sound. And there's a couple things to set up your DAW every single time to sound amazing. So you can watch that video series for free, and my ebook, The Number One Rule of Home Recording. So if you join there, put your email in there, you'll get those tools absolutely free. And then I also send a bunch of bonus content to my list every single week for free that I don't post anywhere else. So if you like what you see on the site, you'll probably like the exclusive stuff on the mailing list as well.
Perfect. Like I said, Graham, I appreciate it. And for those of you who haven't yet already done so, I'm going to post a link in the chat as well. While you're at it, you should join the TechMuze Academy's community. We have a community newsletter there as well. It's just go to techmuseacademy.com. It's pretty obvious, big and bold on the front page there. If you want to stay in touch with what we're doing over there, we talk about music production and music marketing. Those are the two pillar topics of conversation. Graham, thanks again for spending some time with us. And hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Anytime. Have me on anytime. I'm honored, Dezz. Thanks for inviting.